Netflix decided to roll out a light machine gun and pelt us with animated news apparently, and we'll get around to the big compilation trailer that they released just yesterday. But today, let's talk about the real big news, especially for us Brits. Wallace and Gromit has gotten a massive update. Not just in the form of a title card, not just in the form of 10 seconds of footage, but also a big major plot reveal that's massive to the franchise and very, very memeified. One of the most popular elements of the entire Wallace and Gromit franchise, Feathers McGraw. He's back! Incredible. The title for the new Wallace and Gromit Netflix movie has now been revealed, as has the villain, and boy am I more excited than I really should be. Feathers McGraw, the big bad penguin from The Wrong Trousers, is back in the game, and now with this news and title reveal, I'm questioning everything. I mean, when you think about it, this is the first time there's ever been a direct sequel to a Wallace and Gromit movie. Up until this point, there's been no continuing plotline beyond Wallace being an addict for cheese and inventions. The guy's got an addictive personality, just saying. All of the movies have been standalone stories, with Wallace and Gromit's work situation and side characters being completely different every time. Turns out, all of those people who read way too far into his cameo in Chicken Run 2 being more than just a joke were absolutely right, and I absolutely hate that. When I walked past the Aardman building in Bristol earlier this year, they'd added him to the window display with a warning poster, and I didn't suspect a thing! God, I've missed the mark here. So, after putting this Marvel-level foreshadowing on us, yesterday Aardman dropped the grand reveal that he is finally officially back. Feathers McGraw is back to torment Wallace and Gromit in the new movie, now titled Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Fowl. That's foul as in chicken, by the way, because, of course, when he puts that rubber glove on his head, it's uncanny. The title has also thrown me into doubt, right? Because clearly, he's going to be central to this plot, the title detail considered. However, it also seems a country mile away from the AI-focused plot with the robot gnome villain that we were told about previously. For those of you that weren't aware, about a month ago we made a video about Wallace and Gromit and its upcoming movie already, and in it we had all sorts of production details from the crew telling us some of the plot stuff, including the fact that there was going to be an AI-focused plotline, what with Wallace being an inventor and talking about maybe more modern techs of modern society to make commentary out of, as well as mentioning that there was going to be a robot gnome villain. The idea is very interesting and certainly sparked my speculative brain to see where they would go, and clearly it would insinuate an entirely new, standalone Wallace and Gromit movie that's not attached as a sequel, has no indication of the penguin chicken villain man, and yet now it seems those two factoids coming together don't come together at all. Is this still going to be a part of it, or was the evil gnome a complete herring? Because I feel like it might be, you know? I think Wallace's obsession with inventions for everything will be the story still, with Feathers taking advantage of that as he did in The Wrong Trousers. However, I think a lot of the initial plot details should now be called into question. Maybe the gnome is rigged by Feathers, but then it literally feels like The Wrong Trousers again, but with a gnome. Perhaps it is that the robot gnome was just code words for the penguin, who is kind of gnome-like, you know? A small little guy wearing a red piece of head attire. Maybe he stood in the garden so long that they thought he was a gnome and forgot he was a villain, and he's the gnome the whole time. You know, like some sort of disguise situation there. I hope there's more to it than that, but if it is, Wallace and Gromit tend to keep the story streamlined and accessible to focus more on the characters and humor, so not really a big deal. As long as they do whatever they're doing well, I don't mind too much. And Aardman's pretty good when it comes to handling the Wallace and Gromit franchise. Now, this was to coincide with Netflix's big animation launch trailer for 2024, which we will also talk about in an upcoming video. There's a lot to digest from these 3 minutes of footage. I'd like to do all sorts of things with it. It'll probably cover the next week, probably. Who'd have thought we'd see a trailer that combines Wallace and Gromit, Zack Snyder, Ultraman, and SpongeBob? I know the one thing I care about the most, it's the one with the goddamn penguin. Forgive me, I'm British. Literally, the last Wallace and Gromit movie got viewing figures on Christmas Day that were about the same level as a World Cup game. Basically, for me, this is the Super Bowl. And that's coming from someone who witnessed the Super Bowl this year. All we need now is for Wallace alternative commentary for next year's game. Oh my god, that's actually a reality. Capitalism is really popping off this year. Honestly, Gromit, some of my cheese is more aged than DiCaprio's date. You know, like it writes itself. Anyway, I'm pretty sure this is the first secondary Wallace and Gromit character to return from a previous movie. There's always been a sort of complete switch in cast around the central duo. Even after Curse of the Were-Rabbit, none of that huge ensemble were to be seen in A Matter of Loaf and Death, for example. Even Shaun the Sheep, in all of his popularity, had to spin off into his own thing. To be fair, I'd love to see Feathers take on Mrs. Mulch alongside the cooker robot from Grand Day Out. And that's a point. If the robot gnome's still a factor in this movie, that means that half of the Wallace and Gromit villains are robots. If you include the wrong trousers themselves, there's been a robot in most of them. This guy is definitely a fan favorite. A lot of UK millennials remember this guy out of love, hate, and genuine fear, and yet he's never spoken a single line of dialogue. Honestly, it's very impressive. He has a lot of fans, including Incredibles director Brad Bird and Simpsons creator Matt Groening. Hey there, thank you for making it halfway through this video. This is the quick halfway plug to tell you to subscribe. Let me know your thoughts about the Wallace and Gromit movie. You'll also get to keep up with our coverage of all the other Netflix announcements and anything else later in the year. But for now, let's get back to the rest of Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Fowl. But anyway, this is a first for the franchise, and though it does feel a bit grabby for hype, it's bloody well worked. In UK time, this dropped in the evening and still managed to get all of the media attention. Scrolling through the articles on a Google News tab, you'd be forgiven for thinking the Penguin has actually broken out of prison. And he's been in there a long time, since Wrong Trousers came out in 1993. That's like a life sentence for stealing a diamond. Though I guess he does open fire at Gromit during that model train chase, so attempted murder can be thrown in as well. Nonetheless, Penguin or Chicken, the guy should be dead by now. Same with Gromit, to be honest. He is a dog. I'm sorry. I kid, of course. Clearly, all these films take place in an ambiguous period around the 1970s. We don't need to apply real time here. However long he's been in there, clearly the Penguin's out and immediately packing his rubber glove, which leads you to wonder if the police are immediately like, should we be worried he's leaving with his disguise he used to steal loads of stuff? What am I saying? In this world, he apparently looks completely different when the glove's on, so I doubt it even crossed their minds. Side note, please have the Were-Rabbit police officer appear in that prison as well. Mwah, make it a full cinematic universe. It's just a franchise. Keep up with it, please. I love it. We love the bait of connecting everything. We need to see him and his freakishly tall, bald head again. Come on. But that does lead me to wonder, will this be the only returning face in the film? They've broken the unofficial rules of the movie with this, as I've said. Wallace and Gromit have entered their continuity sphere now, and I think other characters could now be on the table. They don't have to be major like the police officer, but I wouldn't rule out bigger players. Shaun would be the biggest, of course. Would love to see his crew take that penguin down as well, but will Wallace get back with Gwendolyn despite her allergy to cheese that Wallace got into a hissy fit in the first place? Or what about his other exes? Imagine there's a cinematic universe of Wallace's girlfriends. Interesting to see at the very least. Does Gromit's love interest get fridged by Feathers in the opening scene? Is Chicken Run 2 directly connected as Feathers popped up at the end there? I think absolutely not to all of that. I'm just going into a frenzy at this point, but is it great? Am I just being part of the problem to say that I want everything to be connected like this? I could just as easily see Feathers being the one returning character, and that's it. And that's fine. We don't need an MCU bells and whistles cameo fest from Aardman, regardless of my manic speculation just then. But combining what we already know about the plot, Wallace's invention obsession actually becoming a problem, which has never really been discussed, and punctuating that with Feathers coming back, I think there's something potentially very strong there. In our last video about this movie, I even said that this plotline kind of feels like a climax to Wallace's inventing that's been built up across all of the movies. We've seen inventions made for the laziest of purposes, like just putting jam on toast. As with homebots like Alexa and being able to switch lights off with your phone, we are also getting into a Wallace-like state where we are also, in real life, relying on gadgets and bots to do the most mundane of tasks. Wallace is now the lens for the modern first world, I'm saying it now. The whole franchise has been about consumerism and AI takeover this whole time, and there we have it. now coming to fruition as Wallace's over-the-top techno-reality becomes ours, combining with the fact that Feathers McGraw hacked into his early trousers invention and now could do an AI takeover with an extra level of hacking abilities. It thematically fits to both of the characters. Add on to the fact that nowadays with AI, we're going even further off, that AI is now replacing our arts and creative abilities, the hobby projects we would want to do if we didn't have to pay our bills and contribute to society. Meanwhile, actually AI is doing that instead, and we have to do the dishes. What a role reversal. They've taken the fun jobs and we still have to break our backs doing the labor work. But genuinely, as a story for Wallace and Gromit, this is a really interesting angle to explore the characters from. Until now, we've had Wallace's relationship drama and him eating too much cheese as like the central plot. I find this angle a lot more interesting, and his obsession with inventions is famously what got him into trouble with old Beady Eyes the first time. When you think about it, he had to resort to renting out a room to Feathers because he spent all their money on some techno trousers, that then get overridden by the very lodger they instigated. I didn't really plan to make this much of a deep dive of Wallace and Gromit lore as I have, and I could go on as well, but really, I want to see a climax where Feathers uncovers the mind manipulation thing and turns himself into a were-penguin, and Wallace has to become a were-rabbit again to save us all. Kind of a Godzilla vs. Kong situation. I'm gonna stop there before I go even more unhinged with this, but even still, coming back to reality now, Wallace and Gromit Vengeance Most Fowl drops on Christmas Day later this year on Netflix internationally and on the BBC in the UK. If there was something to get the hype up for Wallace and Gromit after being completely absent for the entirety of the 2010s, then I think this was it. Bring back that 31-year-old villain? Why not? I've already seen this shared on every British meme page out there. In the UK at least, this is a massive deal. It's the only thing I'm patriotic about. I otherwise only laugh at the politics of this country. Wow, what a time for entertainment. But on that note, that is at least the very first thing I want to dissect from the Netflix overblown, oh my god, I have too much information to talk about, and then there's Angry Birds and Sony news. At least for now. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do tell me your thoughts on this Wallace and Gromit movie, or check out our prior video about the production details and potential plot pieces, and I shall see you all in a little bit.